Luca Moreno gazed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse suite. The glistening skyline of downtown Seattle spread out below, brimming with traffic, bright lights, and a pulse he'd never quite felt himself. It was just past midnight, and yet the city hummed on, unlike him. He flipped through the silent channels of his mind, wondering if this was what success was supposed to feel like. He had built a tech empire worth millions and boasted an army of lawyers, advisors, and staff. The silent penthouse, with its minimalist furniture and pristine surfaces, reflected Luca's clinical approach to life: keep things efficient, keep them controlled, and never let them get too close. At 41, Luca carried a restlessness. Behind the measured calm of his storm-gray eyes, he was haunted by the sense that something was missing. He could buy anything he wanted except what his father had always demanded: an heir to continue the Moreno name. That father, his earliest mentor and biggest critic, had passed away 2 years ago, leaving Luca with a legacy that felt more like a curse. The older man's final words echoed in Luca's mind: a real Moreno leaves his mark on the world, find a way. Luca turned from the window and glanced at a photograph on a glass console table. The girl in it, his younger sister, had died decades earlier from a congenital illness. After she passed, Luca's parents retreated into cold silence that matched his present environment. That single tragedy had formed the blueprint for his life: keep attachments to a minimum, trust no one, and protect yourself. Yet tonight, as he stared at the twinkling city, he felt a pull. He had no illusions about romance or marriage, not with the world full of people who'd want him for his money. But the family name needed continuing, at least according to his father's haunting memory. An heir, the one piece left missing from the empire he had built. He flipped the lights off in the penthouse, letting darkness swallow the gleaming surfaces. Tonight, the emptiness felt too loud. 3 blocks away, under a half-broken awning at a subway entrance, Raya Cruz clenched a guitar between her knees. Rain pelted the city streets, the downpour almost drowning out her voice. She sang anyway, as though the storm might carry her voice to every door that was closed to her. Raya was 25, with deep brown eyes and long dark hair that was plastered to her cheeks under a threadbare hood. Her hoodie was soaked, her fingers numb, but she pressed on because this was her only source of income. She had been a budding musician, once on the verge of a record deal, but life had thrown her too many curveballs too quickly. She couldn't afford to be delicate anymore. A few stray passers-by lingered momentarily in the rain, mostly out of pity. Some dropped coins or small bills into her open guitar case. Others hurried past as though she didn't exist. Raya sang, her voice haunting and raw. I stand alone in the beating rain. Searching for home, searching for my name. The lyrics were her own, scrawled in an old notebook that was just as battered as her dream. If no one would pay attention, she'd make them feel her pain in the only way she knew, through music. She finished the song to a smattering of polite applause from a couple huddled under a shared umbrella. They smiled apologetically and vanished into the subway station. Raya's heart squeezed with loneliness, but she refused to stop. She glanced at the small pile of coins, quickly counting them, barely enough for a cheap dinner or, more likely, a box of noodles to share with her younger brother, Kai, who waited in the hospital. Gathering her guitar and the few belongings she had, Raya made her way toward the bus stop. Every step echoed the truth she tried to deny: she was running out of options. Kai needed expensive medication, and the hospital bills were piling up. If he wasn't treated properly, he'd go the same way their parents had, lost too soon, leaving Raya more alone than ever. Lightning cracked through the sky. She flinched. Something had to change. And soon. Luca's day began before the sun fully rose. By 9 in the morning, he had already concluded a business meeting over a video call with European investors. At noon, he emerged onto the busy streets for a rare stroll. Usually, a driver picked him up, but something compelled him to walk today. Perhaps he was in search of something he couldn't name. His walk took him near the subway station, where a faint melody reached his ears. It was midday now, and the rain had subsided, but the world was still coated with silver puddles and dripping eaves. The voice he heard was raw, tinged with heartbreak. Luca found it captivating. Raya was there again, strumming and singing a different tune. This time, her melody was bright, despite the gloom around them. He lingered, intrigued by the audacity in her voice. She noticed him standing at a distance, tall, in a tailored suit, obviously wealthy and out of place among the casual pedestrians. She sang the final chords, expecting him to toss a coin or walk away. Instead, he approached. "That's an original?" he asked, his voice low and even, reminiscent of the hush before thunder. Raya nodded. "Yeah, I write my own stuff." She kept her posture guarded, uncertain why this obviously well-off man was talking to her. He studied her for a moment, as though deciding something. "Have you ever considered other opportunities to make money?" She frowned, feeling vaguely insulted. "What kind of opportunities are you talking about?" "Not prostitution," Luca clarified, reading her expression. "Something more personal. I'm looking for someone to carry a child for me." Raya's grip on her guitar tightened, and she let out a disbelieving laugh. "You're joking." He shook his head. "I'm not. I want a surrogate. I have money to offer." The directness took her breath away. She'd heard rumors of rich people doing anything to secure an heir. But this was insane. "I'm sure there are agencies for that," she replied, her voice shaking slightly. "I don't trust agencies. Or the people they vet. I want someone who won't try to stake a claim on my life. I want someone self-sufficient. Independent. And you seem like a free spirit." Raya stared at him, stunned and offended. "I'm not going to sell my body or my child to a stranger. I'm offering a contract," Luca said calmly. "No strings attached. You'll be compensated well. $500,000, plus all medical expenses." Her heart hammered. She could practically see her brother's hospital bill in her mind. 500,000 was a staggering sum. Still, was she that desperate? She almost spat out an insult, but she remembered Kai's pale face, hooked up to 4 drips. Luca saw the conflict in her eyes. "Think about it," he said, handing her a card with a phone number. "If you change your mind, call me." He walked away, leaving her trembling with confusion. $500,000. The number rang in her ears like an impossible chord she could never have imagined playing. 2 days passed. Raya tried to go about her life, performing on the streets, scraping together money for Kai. But the hospital bills mounted. The doctor cornered her in the hallway outside Kai's room. "We can't keep offering the best treatment if the bills remain unpaid," the doctor said gently, looking sympathetic but firm. "He needs consistent medication, and that medication isn't cheap." Raya's throat burned with unshed tears. I understand, but please, just a little more time. He's all I have." The doctor gave a small nod. "We'll try. But we need a real plan, Miss Cruz." She paced around the hospital corridor, hugging her guitar case close. 500,000. She dialed the phone number before she lost the nerve. When a calm, professional voice answered, she realized it was an assistant. "I need to speak to Luca Moreno," she managed. Within 10 minutes, Luca was on the line. He asked no questions, simply told her to meet him at his penthouse. The abruptness of it all set her nerves on edge. That evening, she arrived at his building. Everything about the place screamed wealth: the lobby's marble floors, the gold-engraved elevator doors, the security guard who politely escorted her to the top floor. She stepped into Luca's sleek penthouse, trying not to show how overwhelmed she felt. He motioned for her to sit on a white leather couch. A panoramic view of the city spread out behind him. His eyes locked onto hers with the same unwavering focus he'd shown at the subway station. "You've decided, then?" he asked. She fought to keep her chin raised. "I have conditions. I won't be some prisoner. I want to keep my freedom. I need the money up front, at least partially, to cover my brother's hospital bills." Luca studied her. How sick is he? She swallowed. He has a condition. It's degenerative. If he doesn't get treatment, he could, she trailed off, unable to say the word die. A flicker of something, empathy, crossed Luca's face. All right. We can arrange an initial payment to handle your immediate needs. The rest will come in installments. After the child is born, you'll receive the balance. Her eyes flickered with determination. And I'm not marrying you. I'm not playing house. This is strictly business. Something in Luca's gaze softened, just a fraction. Agreed. Strictly business. By the following week, Raya signed the contract with shaking hands. She told herself she was doing this for Kai, only for Kai. Medical bills paid, a safe place to stay, and a chance to restore her life once the ordeal was over. She'd still own her music, her dream. It would just be on hold for 9 months. Luca's lawyers set up everything clinically. The surrogacy procedure was arranged at a top fertility clinic, funded by Luca's near-bottomless bank account. Shortly after, Raya tested positive for pregnancy. During that time, Luca moved her into the guest house on his vast estate. It wasn't a cramped little guest room, it was practically a mansion in itself, with a private kitchen, a small recording studio he had built for soundproof business calls, which she could use for her music, and a sunlit terrace overlooking an immaculately kept garden. The first morning in her new home, Raya noticed a small envelope under her door. Inside was a note. You're free to come and go. Just keep my security team informed when you leave. For your safety. LM. Even his notes had a cool formality. She sighed and tossed it aside. At least he wasn't locking her in. That was something. At midday, she tentatively wandered into the main house for a meal. She found the kitchen, staffed by a single chef who greeted her kindly. The chef prepared a healthy spread, mindful of pregnancy guidelines. As Raya nibbled on fruit and yogurt, Luca appeared in the doorway. Is everything to your liking? He asked. She nodded. It's more than I'm used to, that's for sure. He stood there, posture rigid, as though uncertain how to converse in a more personal setting. If you need anything adjusted, dietary restrictions or preferences, just inform the chef. She offered a polite thanks and turned her attention back to the meal, trying to ignore the tension thrumming between them. He didn't linger, quietly excusing himself. That was how it went for the first few weeks, cordial distance, polite nods, and an unspoken barrier of formality. In the evenings, Raya would retreat to her guest house, write music, and strum her guitar, trying to remind herself of who she was beyond this surreal surrogacy arrangement. One rainy night, Raya was curled up in bed with a notebook, scribbling lyrics by the dim glow of a bedside lamp. She couldn't sleep, her mind buzzed with the day's events. She'd just returned from visiting Kai in the hospital. His condition was stable for now, and that gave her hope. The small door connecting the guest house to the main mansion rattled with a soft knock. She hesitated, then opened it to find Luca standing under the overhang, lightly soaked from the downpour outside. Why didn't you call me? She asked, stepping aside so he could enter. It's pouring. I came to see if you needed anything. I noticed your light was still on, he replied, brushing droplets of rain from his coat. She looked at him oddly. I'm fine. Just writing. He nodded. I heard a bit of your music earlier. You left the window open. Her cheeks warmed. She hadn't realized her music carried through the estate. Sorry if it disturbed you. He shook his head. No. It was, he struggled to find the word. Memorable. I've never heard anything like it. Silence hung between them. Finally, Luca glanced around the cozy living space of the guest house. A single lamp illuminated the room, casting long shadows on the walls. He spotted her guitar, propped near the foot of the couch, a battered instrument that had seen far better days. You love music, he said, as if stating the obvious. Raya shrugged. It's all I have sometimes. Luca stared for a moment longer, then cleared his throat. I'll let you rest. Good night. As he left, she realized she wasn't sure if she found him cold or if his reserve masked something deeper. Maybe both. The next few weeks moved slowly. Every morning, Raya woke up feeling more sure she was indeed pregnant. Nausea visited her some days, and on other days, she felt an odd surge of energy. Luca's staff arranged a driver to take her to checkups. Kai's hospital bills were being covered, with 0 questions asked. For that, she was grateful. In her free hours, Raya delved into songwriting with renewed fervor. Some songs were lullabies, soft and tentative, as though she was trying to speak to the child she carried. Others were heartbreak ballads, capturing her conflicting emotions about this arrangement. She never intended for Luca to see those words, scribbled on loose sheets or in the margins of her notebooks. But one afternoon, she left a half-finished song on the living room coffee table. Later that night, she found it carefully placed on her desk. It had been read. Curiosity ate at her. She knocked on the main house door and found Luca in his study. He was behind a large wooden desk, the space lit by a single lamp. Papers were neatly stacked around him. You read my lyrics, she said, stepping inside. He didn't deny it. I saw them lying around. I was curious. You could have asked, she replied, crossing her arms. He exhaled. You wrote about loss, about feeling alone in a crowd. Those words resonated. For a heartbeat, she felt exposed. They're personal. I understand, Luca said softly, tapping his fingers on the desk. I won't intrude again. But Raya, standing in the hush of that study, sensed the ghost of his own loneliness. Maybe he'd intruded because he, too, felt something akin to her heartbreak, just in a different shape. Unable to think of a reply, she merely nodded and slipped out, leaving him to his solitude. One morning, around her 20th week of pregnancy, Raya was dozing on the couch when a sudden flutter across her belly jolted her awake. At first, she thought it was a muscle spasm, but then it happened again, firmer this time. Her heart soared. It was the baby's first palpable movement. She let out a shocked laugh, pressing her palms to the soft curve of her abdomen. Hey, little one, she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. In a burst of excitement, she found herself hurrying to the main house, her feet carrying her to Luca's study. He was on a conference call. She paused, biting her lip. They weren't exactly friends, but this was his child, too. Gently, she knocked. He looked up, saw the urgency in her eyes, and muted the call. What is it? He asked, concern edging into his voice. She blurted, the baby kicked. Do you want to feel it? His eyes widened slightly, hesitation and curiosity battling in his expression. Then he rose from his desk, stepping around to her. She guided his hand to her belly. At first, there was nothing, just the quiet hush between them. Then, a gentle thump, faint but unmistakable. Luca's breath caught. A flicker of awe crossed his features, briefly thawing the icy composure he wore. For a moment, he didn't speak, just kept his hand there, almost afraid to move. Raya inhaled shakily. It's real. I knew it before, but now, it feels so real. Luca looked at her with eyes that suddenly held warmth. He offered a small, genuine smile. Yes, it's real. The baby kicked again, bridging the silence that had once separated them. Curiosity gnawed at Raya after that small connection. Why was Luca so guarded? She'd heard rumors in the house. The staff never gossiped openly, but she picked up bits and pieces, something about a traumatic loss in his family. That evening, she found an old photo album on a shelf in the living room of the main house. Dust had settled along the cover, indicating it hadn't been touched in years. Opening it, she saw a series of photos, Luca as a child, a lively girl with pigtails who looked to be his sister. Their parents stood in the background of some shots, stiff and unsmiling. She was so engrossed, she didn't notice Luca's presence until he cleared his throat. Raya jumped, nearly dropping the album. "You shouldn't pry," he said, though his tone lacked harshness. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. I found it by accident." An awkward silence hung. Instead of storming away, Luca hesitated, his eyes on a photo showing him and his sister, both wearing matching sweaters, arms thrown around each other. "She was my sister, Aurora," he said. "She died when I was 14. Raya shut the album carefully. "I'm sorry." He sank into the couch, the weight of memories pressing down on him. It wasn't just her death. It was what came after. My parents shut down emotionally. They expected me to carry on the family line, to be perfect. They invested everything in me, even their grief. It became suffocating. She listened, heart aching at the quiet tragedy. That must have been hard. It taught me not to rely on people's affection. It can vanish overnight, he said, eyes distant. They were so fixated on me becoming this big success. I guess that's why I ended up where I am. But sometimes, I wonder if any of it was worth it. Their gazes locked in an odd moment of understanding. Raya set the album aside and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know it's just business between us," she whispered, "but I'm sorry for your loss." His throat tightened. He nodded silently, and something in his posture softened ever so slightly. In late autumn, an unexpected electrical fault in the estate's old wiring sparked a small fire in the guesthouse's kitchen. Raya had just finished a practice session in the mini studio when she smelled smoke. Alarmed, she opened the kitchen door to see flames licking the curtains. She grabbed the fire extinguisher, but panic made her hands shake. Before she could use it, Luca burst in, having sprinted from the main house when the alarm went off. He wrested the extinguisher from her trembling grip and doused the flames expertly. A swirl of acrid smoke hung in the air. Raya coughed, eyes watering. Luca guided her out of the guest house, his hand steady on her elbow. Outside, cold air stung her lungs, and she sank onto the grass, still coughing. He crouched beside her, scanning her worriedly. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, eyes brimming with tears from the scare. "I'm okay. I couldn't get it under control." Luca's heart pounded. He realized how close she and the baby had come to danger. He reached out to steady her. She looked up, noticing the intensity on his face. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," he muttered, pulling off his jacket to drape around her shoulders. "I should have replaced that wiring years ago." In the distance, the estate staff scrambled to call the fire department, but the immediate threat was gone. For a moment, it was just the two of them in the moonlit yard, the adrenaline gradually subsiding. Luca helped her to her feet. His arms lingered around her, a silent assurance that she was safe. And in that fleeting moment, the barrier between them frayed, both realizing the baby was no longer just a contract but a tiny life they both sought to protect. After the fire, repairs took a few days. Raya moved temporarily into a spare bedroom in the main house. The proximity forced them to share quiet breakfasts and the occasional late-night tea when neither could sleep. One such night, Raya was restless. She shuffled into the living room with her guitar, thinking to play softly by herself. To her surprise, Luca was already there, staring at the embers of a dying fire in the fireplace. He turned when she entered, managing a small half-smile. "Couldn't sleep?" She nodded. Too many thoughts. She began to strum a lullaby she'd been working on. It was gentle, with delicate chords that seemed to cradle the unborn child. Luca listened in silence, drawn in by the sweetness of her voice. When she finished, he ventured softly, "What's it called?" She flushed. I haven't named it yet. It's for the baby, in a way. He stood from his armchair and approached, removing the guitar from her hands gently. Will you sing it again? Raya's heart hammered at how close he stood, but she nodded. Her voice was quieter this time, the notes even more intimate. As she sang, Luca closed his eyes, letting the melody wash over him. When she ended, the silence was charged. That was beautiful, he said at last, his voice thick with emotion he couldn't quite hide. For a moment, neither knew what to say. So they did nothing but let the lullaby's echo fill the room, hearts a little less guarded than they'd been before. Winter settled over the city, bringing crisp air and early sunsets. It also brought a wake-up call in the form of Luca's lawyer visiting to review the surrogacy agreement. The older man, with silver hair and sharp eyes, sat at the main house's dining table with thick files and pointed reminders. Under the agreement, once the child is born, Miss Cruz relinquishes all parental rights, the lawyer stated, flipping through the documents. She'll receive her final payment, and the matter concludes. There is a confidentiality clause, no contact or claims to custody. We've spelled that out clearly. Raya listened, her stomach twisting. Although she was nearing the final trimester, the reality of the contract was hitting her with brutal force. She'd known about these terms from the start, but experiencing the baby's kicks, hearing the lullabies, and seeing Luca's guarded warmth had complicated everything. And you, Mr. Moreno, the lawyer continued, need to decide if you plan to finalize the custody papers immediately at birth. There's no grace period. Everything is set in stone. Luca's mouth tightened into a line. He glanced at Raya from across the table. Her eyes flickered with an emotion he couldn't quite name, fear, regret, longing? Everything's still proceeding according to plan, Luca said slowly, although his voice held a note of hesitation. The lawyer raised an eyebrow but continued. Then we'll keep the arrangement as is. Please sign here, both of you. Raya's fingers trembled on the pen. She scrawled her name, feeling as though she was signing away a piece of herself. Luca signed too, his signature a bold slash across the page. And with that, the contract was reaffirmed. They parted ways after, each uneasy about the future. By spring, Raya's belly was round and heavy. The baby's movements were strong and rhythmic, as though dancing to one of her songs. She tried to prepare herself for what came next, handing over the child she had carried for 9 months. The thought tore at her insides, but she reminded herself, this was the deal. Her brother Kai was recovering well, thanks to the top-notch medical care Luca's money provided. That was her mantra, her justification. Late one night, a raging storm battered the mansion. Lightning streaked the sky, and thunder rattled the windows. Raya, awake and uncomfortable, felt a sudden wave of pain grip her abdomen. Her heartbeat quickened. Another contraction hit, sharper this time. She realized with a jolt, it was happening. The baby was coming. She struggled to stand and made it halfway to the door before a particularly fierce contraction dropped her to her knees. She cried out, fear gripping her. Then footsteps thundered down the hallway. Luca burst in, eyes wide, hair disheveled from having been asleep. What's wrong? He demanded, rushing to her side. I think it's time, she gasped between contractions. He didn't waste a second. With surprising gentleness, he scooped her into his arms and called for the driver. They hurried to the car, rain lashing around them. On the ride to the hospital, Luca held her hand, telling her to breathe, his voice urgent but calm. At the hospital, doctors whisked Raya into a delivery room, hooking her to monitors. Luca was asked if he wanted to remain for the birth. He hesitated only a moment before nodding. He stood by Raya, gripping her hand as contraction after contraction shook her. After hours of labor, an anguished cry finally cut through the stormy night. A brand new, bright-eyed baby boy entered the world. Luca stared at his son in awestruck wonder. Emotions he'd buried for years threatened to break through. The nurse handed the baby to Raya first. Her heart soared even as tears of heartbreak streaked her cheeks. Then she carefully passed him to Luca. He gently took the small bundle, a trembling smile forming on his face. This was his child, his legacy, his future. In that moment, everything else fell away, replaced by the overwhelming miracle of new life. 2 days later, Raya's hospital room was filled with a chilling silence. The child was healthy, doctors gave both mother and baby a clean bill of health. According to the contract, Raya would be released, and Luca would take the baby home. The final check, a colossal sum, waited in an envelope at the nurse's station. Raya stared at the child sleeping in a bassinet, tears pricking her eyes. She had thought she could do it, walk away and never look back. But the reality felt like a knife twisting inside her. She wanted to hold him one more time, sing him a lullaby. She wanted to name him, but the contract stated Luca would handle that. When Luca entered, she steeled herself. "Your lawyers will be here soon, right?" she asked, voice trembling. He nodded, gaze flickering between the baby and Raya. "Yes. They'll handle the paperwork to finalize everything." She took a shaky breath. "Then I guess this is goodbye." Luca's expression was pained. "Raya." She held up a hand. "Don't. I knew what I signed up for." Her voice cracked. "Just take care of him." "I will," Luca said quietly, his own voice threaded with regret. A moment passed. With a trembling hand, Raya picked up her guitar case and her small duffel bag from the corner of the room. She brushed her palm softly over the baby's tiny head in farewell. Then she pulled herself away, forcing her legs to carry her out the door. The hallways of the hospital felt endless. She paused at the nurse's station, picked up the envelope of money, and left. Each step echoed with the realization that she might never see her child again. Luca brought the baby, whom he had named Gabriel, home to the estate. The once silent mansion was now filled with a newborn's cries. A team of nannies and staff stood ready to help, but Luca found himself uncharacteristically hesitant to delegate. He tried to soothe Gabriel himself, holding him awkwardly, pacing the polished floors. The baby's cries only subsided when Luca hummed or played a recording of Raya's lullaby. There was something about her voice that calmed the child instantly. Night after night, Gabriel fussed and refused to sleep. Luca grew restless, exhaustion layering on top of an unfamiliar ache. He missed Raya's presence more than he cared to admit. "It's strictly business," he had told himself. Then why did he replay the memory of her singing, the sound of her laughter, and the warmth of her smile? One late evening, he wandered into the guest house. The space was vacant now, most of the furniture covered with sheets to protect from dust. In the living room, her guitar stand remained empty. He sighed and traced a finger over the stand, recalling how she used to sit there, legs folded, plucking out melodies that somehow cut through his icy exterior. He felt alone. The contract was fulfilled. He had his heir. But the house felt colder and more lifeless than ever. Spring warmed into early summer, and Gabriel grew each day. He had Raya's warm eyes and a quiet, watchful expression. Sometimes, Luca sang the lullaby he remembered, though he did so clumsily, wishing he had Raya's voice to comfort the infant. One afternoon, Luca was in his office, going over quarterly reports. The radio played softly in the background, a local station featuring emerging artists. He was half listening, mind occupied with numbers, when the host introduced a new track. "Next up, we have a heartfelt piece by rising local singer-songwriter, Raya Cruz. This one's already generating buzz online, folks." Luca froze. Then, Raya's unmistakable voice filled the air, tender and powerful. The song spoke of loss, of making choices that haunt you, and of the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to reclaim what was broken. His heart pounded. She had recorded a track. She was out there, singing her truths, forging a path for herself. And he felt an overwhelming urge to reach out to her, to see her and tell her that she wasn't the only one haunted by their arrangement. He turned off the radio, silence filling the office once more. But the melody lingered in his mind. He knew he needed to find her. Not for the baby alone, but for himself. Raya's career had been a slow grind, but she was determined to succeed. She had used part of the money to invest in her music, studio time, producing songs, booking small shows at local bars. Her biggest personal joy, though, was seeing Kai fully recovered and back on his feet, even smiling as she performed. One evening, she was scheduled to sing at a small bar near the waterfront. The venue was modest, but the crowd was attentive. Midway through her set, she introduced a new piece. "This next one," she said into the microphone, "is personal. It's for someone I never got to thank properly." As she began to sing, the door opened at the back of the bar. Luca slipped in, searching the dimly lit crowd until he found her on stage. His heart thundered at the sight of her, vibrant under the stage lights, eyes closed in passionate performance. She was mesmerizing. Raya ended her set to sincere applause. She stepped off the stage, and a small line of fans formed to speak with her. She chatted politely, signed a couple of autographs. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him, tall, composed, and heartbreakingly familiar. Her breath caught. She approached slowly, guitar still in hand. "Luca, what are you doing here?" He swallowed. "I heard your song on the radio. I had to see you." Her guard shot up. "Is something wrong with the baby?" "No. Gabriel's fine. He's perfect." Luca paused, stepping closer. "I came for both of you." She stared at him, arms hugging her guitar. "You have no right to do this now. I gave up everything to give you a child. We had an agreement." His voice shook with sincerity. "I know. But I can't go on pretending it was just business. I regret letting you walk away like that." Her eyes welled with tears. She dreamed of hearing those words but had convinced herself it would never happen. "Luca, it's complicated. You wanted a legacy, not a relationship." He gazed at her with an openness she'd never seen before. "I wanted a child to continue my father's name. But I didn't realize what that truly meant until Gabriel was born. A legacy isn't just about blood, it's about family, love, and the people we can't live without." She trembled. "And you think we can fix this?" "I don't have all the answers," he admitted, voice thick. "But I want to try." Their first conversation after that was long and raw. They sat at a corner table in the bar, well past closing, with the owner politely letting Raya stay until they were done. She and Luca talked about everything, the guilt she felt over leaving her baby, the emptiness he felt at home, the surrogacy contract that had seemed so straightforward but turned into a tangle of emotions. "I can't just pretend those 9 months were nothing," Raya confessed. "A part of me is with that baby. And I can't pretend I don't care about you," Luca said, his hand resting on hers. "I tried to keep things purely transactional, but you brought life into my home, more than just Gabriel's. Your music, your spirit. I've never felt that before." She wiped away a tear. "So what now?" He sighed. "The contract states you have no parental rights. But I can have my lawyers." "No," she interjected. "I don't want lawyers to define what happens next. If we do this, we have to do it because we both want it, not because of a piece of paper." He nodded, conviction in his eyes. "Then let's just do this ourselves. Move back to the estate, be with Gabriel, and see if we can build something real, without all the cold formalities." Raya's heart thudded at the thought. Moving in again, but this time not as a surrogate, but as a partner? Could it really work? She squeezed his hand. "Okay. Let's try." The next day, Luca took Raya to see Gabriel. The baby was napping in the nursery. Soft beams of morning light streaked through the curtains, illuminating the crib. Raya approached carefully, tears forming as she saw her son for the first time in weeks. He stirred, those tiny brown eyes peering up at her. She lifted him gently. Gabriel snuggled against her chest, a small coo escaping his lips. Raya choked back a sob. "He's grown," she whispered. Luca stood beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Yes. He has. I'd like you to be here, as his mother, every day." She nodded, pressing her forehead to Gabriel's small head. "Thank you." Gradually, they found a new routine. Raya continued booking small performances, and sometimes Luca would attend, holding Gabriel in a front-row seat. She'd glance at them mid-song, heart bursting with a sense of belonging she'd never felt. Word spread about Raya's heartfelt music, and one night, a local producer caught her show and offered her a bigger opportunity, a spot in a music festival that would be broadcast regionally. Overjoyed, she accepted. This time, she had a real stage, real recognition. On the day of the festival, she performed in front of hundreds of people. The crowd cheered her name. In the front row, Luca held Gabriel, a proud grin lighting his usually stern features. As Raya poured her heart into her songs, she realized that everything she had endured, every heartbreak, every compromise, had led her to this moment of triumph in love. Time passed, and their story evolved from a secret arrangement to a visible partnership. Social media started buzzing about Raya's songs, especially when word got out about her relationship with the mysterious tech millionaire who quietly sponsored her behind the scenes. With her festival success, Raya's music began to spread. She was approached by a record label, and negotiations started for an official album. But the track that garnered the most attention was an unexpected duet. Luca had hesitantly agreed to record a small spoken interlude on one of her new songs, a lullaby titled Legacy of Love. It was a simple yet poignant piece, featuring Raya's vocals, gentle guitar, and a brief spoken word by Luca about finding meaning in unexpected places. They released it on social media, not planning anything grand. But within days, the track went viral, accumulating millions of views and shares. News outlets picked up the love story behind the music. Headlines read, "Tech millionaire and surrogate turned songstress release emotional duet." Although neither Luca nor Raya had intended to publicize the surrogacy angle, the story leaked. Surprisingly, the public responded with an outpouring of support and fascination. In the mansion's living room, Raya stared at the flood of messages pouring in on her phone. People from around the world wrote about how her song moved them, how they felt hope hearing about second chances. Some were surrogates themselves, while others had faced heartbreak or unexpected love. She set the phone down. Luca sat beside her on the couch, Gabriel sleeping in his arms. "Are we ready for the world to know this much about us?" she asked softly. He kissed the top of her head. "We'll handle it together." Tears of joy gathered in Raya's eyes as she glanced at Gabriel, content in his father's arms. She gently tucked a blanket around the baby, then leaned her head on Luca's shoulder. "Thank you for rewriting the story," she whispered. He smiled. "Thank you for singing it." A hush fell over the room, the lullaby of their shared journey echoing in the soft baby snores from Gabriel. Outside, the city lights shimmered, just as they had the night Luca first realized how empty his life was. Now, everything felt different. He had a family, an unconventional beginning, but a bond forged by heartaches, hopes, and music that transcended any contract. As the final notes of their story in progress played out, Luca and Raya understood that love, once found, needed nurturing, compromise, and trust. It was no longer about deals or obligations, but about building a life that neither of them could have built alone. Their legacy, in the end, was not money or empire, but a precious child, a shared song, and a future wide open to every possibility they dared to dream. The end.